In 2007, something extraordinary happened in Kenya, a technology so simple, so unlikely, and yet so powerful that it transformed the lives of millions of people. Long before Silicon Valley even thought it was possible, a money revolution was born. This is the story of M-Pesa, the mobile money system that changed not just Kenya, but the world. The problem before M-Pesa. For most Kenyans in the early 2000s, money was a daily struggle, not because they didn't have it, but because they had nowhere to keep it. Banks were scarce, ATMs were limited to major towns, and opening an account, that required paperwork, fees, and collateral that most ordinary people simply didn't have. In fact, in 2007, nearly 70% of Kenya's population was unbanked. That meant millions carried their savings in their pockets, under mattresses, or hidden in sacks of grain. It was risky. Theft, fire, loss. One accident could wipe out a family's entire future. Sending money was even worse. A worker in Nairobi who wanted to send cash home to his mother in the village had only a few options: entrust a bus driver, give it to a traveling friend, or physically make the trip himself. Sometimes the money arrived, sometimes it didn't. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was a barrier that locked millions out of the economy. And into that gap stepped an unlikely savior: the birth of M-Pesa. In 2007, Safaricom, a Kenyan telecom company partly owned by Vodafone, launched a curious experiment. They called it M-Pesa, M for mobile, Pesa meaning money in Swahili. The original idea wasn't even grand. Vodafone's research team had been looking at ways to let people repay microfinance loans more easily through text messages. But as the idea spread, something bigger emerged. What if anyone, not just borrowers, could send, receive, and store money safely using nothing more than a basic phone? Kenya, it turned out, was the perfect laboratory. By 2007, more than 80% of adults had access to a mobile phone, far more than had a bank account. Safaricom saw the opportunity. With M-Pesa, people could walk into a small shop, hand cash to an agent, and instantly receive e-money on their phone. They could then send it to anyone, anywhere in the country, through a simple SMS. No bank, no forms, no waiting in line. It was so simple. It almost looked too good to be true. How it worked and why it succeeded. M-Pesa's genius wasn't in complicated technology. It was in trust and accessibility. Safaricom already had thousands of airtime resellers scattered across the country. Those resellers now doubled as M-Pesa agents. A farmer in Eldoret could deposit money at her local shop. Her son in Nairobi could withdraw the exact same amount from another shop within minutes. And because the system ran on SMS, you didn't need a smartphone, internet, or even literacy in English. A simple menu of numbers was enough. It worked because it solved a real problem that banks had ignored. While banks focused on wealthy clients, M-Pesa focused on ordinary Kenyans, the market no one thought was profitable. By 2010, just 3 years after launch, over 10 million people were using M-Pesa. That was nearly half of Kenya's adult population. And with it came something even more powerful: trust. When people realized their money was safe in digital form, safer than hiding it under a mattress, a quiet revolution had begun. Lives changed. For millions, M-Pesa wasn't just about convenience, it was survival. Suddenly, workers in Nairobi could send school fees home instantly. Farmers could receive payments without traveling miles. Families could support each other across long distances with just a few clicks. Studies later showed that within a few years of M-Pesa's launch, poverty levels in Kenya had dropped significantly. In fact, one World Bank study estimated that M-Pesa lifted over 200,000 households out of poverty. Women in particular benefited. Many who had been financially dependent on male relatives could now run small businesses, save money discreetly, and build economic independence. Micro-enterprises flourished. Food sellers, shopkeepers, boda riders, all suddenly had access to a simple, safe way to handle transactions. And in emergencies, medical crises, funerals, sudden expenses, M-Pesa became a lifeline. Money could reach where it was needed in minutes, not days. The impact was so visible that economists began calling it the Kenyan miracle. Ripple effect. Across Africa and Zimbabwe, Kenya's success could not be contained. Soon, neighboring countries like Tanzania and Uganda rolled out M-Pesa. Across East Africa, the mobile money wave spread, reshaping economies. But perhaps the most dramatic example came in Zimbabwe. In the late 2000s, Zimbabwe was in the grip of one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history. Prices doubled by the day. The national currency became worthless. People carried bags of banknotes that couldn't even buy bread. In that chaos, mobile money systems modeled after M-Pesa became a lifeline. Zimbabweans used their phones to trade, to survive, to bypass a broken banking system. What started as a Kenyan innovation had now become a regional solution to crisis. And the world was watching. Global ripple effect. When M-Pesa was first introduced, many outside Africa scoffed. Could poor farmers really handle digital finance? Wasn't this too risky? But as the numbers grew, the skepticism turned to astonishment. By the early 2010s, Kenya's mobile money transactions were worth more than 40% of its GDP. That meant almost half the country's economy was flowing through mobile phones. Meanwhile, in the West, mobile payments were still experimental. Apple Pay, Google Wallet, and Venmo all came years later. In effect, Africa had beaten Silicon Valley to the future. Today, the M-Pesa model has influenced financial inclusion projects across Asia, Latin America, and beyond. It proved that innovation doesn't have to come from high-tech labs in California. Sometimes the most transformative ideas are born where the need is greatest. Legacy today. Nearly 2 decades later, M-Pesa is no longer just a Kenyan innovation. It is a global case study in how technology can leapfrog decades of economic barriers. In Kenya, it has grown from a simple money transfer service into an all-encompassing financial ecosystem. With just a few taps on a basic phone, people can buy goods, pay school fees, clear electricity bills, take microloans, and even access health insurance. For many, their first bank was not a traditional building with marble floors and long queues. It was a SIM card. M-Pesa's success has rippled far beyond Kenya. It has expanded into countries like Ghana, Mozambique, Egypt, and even parts of Europe, proving that financial inclusion is not just a dream for the West, but a universal human need. And its influence goes deeper still. Startups across Africa now build on the rails of M-Pesa, using it as a trusted platform for e-commerce, ride-hailing, farming apps, and cross-border trade. In a way, M-Pesa did not just create financial access, it unlocked an entire digital economy. But its most profound legacy cannot be measured in transactions or profits. It is found in the peace of mind of a farmer who no longer hides money under a mattress, in the dignity of a mother who can pay hospital bills without begging relatives, in the security of a student who receives school fees instantly from a parent miles away. M-Pesa gave people something they had been denied for generations: access, security, dignity. And in doing so, it quietly rewrote what it means to be financially included in the 21st century. Closing reflection. When the world thinks of financial innovation, it often looks to Wall Street or Silicon Valley. But sometimes, the future is written in places no one expects. In 2007, on the streets of Nairobi, a quiet revolution began. A revolution that proved technology doesn't just belong to the rich or to the powerful. It belongs to anyone with a problem to solve and the courage to try. This is the story of M-Pesa, a story not just of money, but of hope. So, what can you do about this? First, share this video. Most people don't realize that Kenya quietly beat Silicon Valley to the future of mobile payments. Second, subscribe, because we're going to keep uncovering the hidden economic revolutions that are reshaping our world. And third, drop a comment. Do you think Africa's next great innovation will come from fintech again, or from an entirely different sector? Next week, South Korea's miracle, from war zone to Samsung empire.